What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. Absolutely kick-ass day. I want to break it down on what really pushed it higher, where things might be going over the next couple trading days, and everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So SoFi went up 5.88%, 14.28 the low, 14.93 the high, and you did see a lot of good volume. So 64.8 million shares being traded, 60 is the average, and a lot of that volume actually did come from institutions truly buying, not from algorithmic trading. Data point wise, we didn't really have all that much. We did have the 20-year bond, which normally isn't that big of a mover, but surprisingly enough, we saw a lot of good demand. So kind of, if you read between the lines, it signals that there's a kind of a resurgence of confidence in the American system. So that's kind of a good thing. Let me know your viewpoint on that. But what really kickstarted this nice push higher with SoFi in the broader market was two things. Both essentially came out during the pre-market. One was a deal with the EU. And so the EU was always going to be a good catalyst, but it looks like it reverted back to that 10% tariff. So EU was kind of satisfied with that. At the same time, they also did commit to slashing tariffs on US made vehicles and a couple other things. But nonetheless, this is essentially a good win-win for both the States and the EU. And then in addition to this though, Iran. So this came out again pre-market, and it looks as though that they were looking to reach out and resume talks, nuclear talks with the States, as well as to de-escalate with Israel. So market saw this as a huge plus, as well as the EU kind of thing. So this is ultimately what really moved the market higher. Since this did come out during the pre-market though, I did see a lot of back and forth. So I think they're still essentially attacking each other, but I feel like there is kind of limited amount of damage, I guess, if that kind of makes sense, only because when we left on Friday going into the weekend, people didn't really know, hey, is the States going to come into this whole type of conflict? Is Russia, are we going to have a world war? And come Monday, none of that really happened. So I think the market as well was somewhat satisfied by all of that. But as far as specific to SoFi, there wasn't any SEC filings, no press releases. So it was just merely piggybacking off the broader market. But SoFi's technicals definitely do show signs of a further breakout. So before I get into shorts and options, there was one thing I wanted to kind of talk on. So there was a lot of people chattering about Golden Cross, and I follow one of them, and Chris, I'm sure a lot of you may or may not be aware of who he is, but he was kind of posting quite a lot about the Golden Cross, and that essentially is how the 50-day moving average moves above the 200, signaling a very nice uptrend. And so he kind of was saying that how historically it does result in SoFi going up 130% over a 3.5 month period. And I just wanted to kind of go over this vaguely, but on the actual chart itself, technically, from what I can see, I don't know what Chris is really looking at. And most likely this is why, because he's asking Bar Chart to kind of post about it, most likely why Bar Chart as well hasn't really posted about it, because it didn't really occur. I could be wrong, of course, but as far as I am aware, there has been no Golden Cross. So yeah, it's something to keep in mind, but you do have right now this 50-day moving average in green, and then you have this yellow line, that 200-day moving average. Currently, they are conjoined, and they have been pretty much since May the 13th. So a good couple weeks now, or several weeks. So it's been pretty much beside each other. You haven't seen any crazy cross like this. So I think it is premature to start jumping up and down saying that it's a Golden Cross or anything like that. But obviously, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know your general thoughts on that. But on the actual chart itself, so it is above the ALMA, all the key pivotal moving averages that I generally like to look at. It is somewhat neutral from the stochastic RSI, so it's not really overbought nor oversold. But if it does continue this good momentum, which most likely it will probably get rather overbought around that 1550 range. So again, something to keep in mind. And what that ultimately means is whether there's a negative specific to SoFi or the broader market, you could see some negative volatility, some like consolidation. And again, that's rather normal. So just be aware of that. So I wanted to bring up this whole golden cross type of thing and how I feel it's not really something to be overly excited about right now. But moving on, looking at shorts. So shorts today did increase 385,000 shares. It wasn't just SoFi though, pretty much a lot of heavily shorted stocks. You had them doubling and in some cases tripling down. So it was maybe they just didn't believe today's green day across the board was justified. But again, they increased 385,000 shares. 12.89% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 140 million shares. So shorts are kind of breaking their downtrend. They've been returning, it looks as though, since May the 28th. So obviously they felt like there is more and more upside. There was a lot of good momentum at various stages, of course. But yeah, it's interesting to see. So we'll have to kind of watch what the next data points do really portray, and most likely shorts will be fairly active, as I've stated, either Wednesday, so that would be linked to that Fed decision rate and what Powell says afterwards, and then Friday. So Friday is going to be a big day ultimately, and that is linked often enough to options. So looking today, you did have 16 million in calls, 3.65 in puts, but overall 53% of all the options being done were bullish in nature. So definitely good to see, and so it does insinuate that there is more upside anticipated. From the bulls, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around that $16 range for this week, and then the bears are anticipating for it to be sub roughly $13.50 to $14. So kind of where we're at, level ground in my opinion. So still a little bit more upside as per usual, but yeah, I think just a lot of good things are happening in the broader market, and I think the whole Middle East conflict, if you want to call it that put like a quick stab to the momentum. But I think with that de-escalating, or at least them wanting to de-escalate, that's going to really help the broader market over the next couple trading days. But a lot of big money was getting in both through the secondary market as well as the dark pool. So a lot of strings of buying, as you can kind of see right there. Dark pool, as per usual, very active stuff. Used by a lot of large entities and shorts and whatever else. But with it closing at 1490, it is trading right now between this R2 and this R1. So 1496 is going to be that key pivot to really watch for it to get above early on tomorrow, and then that way you can see, as what I've mentioned, I think it was 2 videos ago, that Elliott Wave Technicals is projecting for it to get to roughly around that 1650. So if it is able to get above this R2, like I said, early on tomorrow, it is fair to assume that you'll see that 1650 most likely by Friday, assuming, let's say, Powell doesn't come out with some craziness and retail sales, manufacturing data come in line with expectations, then yeah, things are going to get very, very fun in the broader market. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Did you buy? Did you sell? What's your general kind of 2 cents on everything that's been happening in the broader market? And then one final thing, pop over to my Patreon. I give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.